Hello and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. Today we have Netflix 326th film from 2020. It's the science fiction film The Midnight Sky, directed by George Clooney. It stars himself, George Clooney, as well, Felicity Jones, David Oyelowo, Tiffany Boone, Demian Bichir, Kyle Chandler, and Caoilinn Springall. I'm Jesse. Thanks for joining me today for this sci-fi adventure film. A bit more than that, but as always, if you are keen on this film, haven't seen it yet a couple of years on, and you want to check it out, do so now and then pause us and come back because we will spoil this as we go. And we do start the show with the Fast Flicks, where we do a quick little summary of what the film is all about. So this one, it's about a dying man who goes across a planet to try and communicate with the outside world and warn them of the dangers. Ooh, intriguing. All right, how did this one end up on Netflix? What's the story behind it? I guess you've got to start that this is based on the 2016 novel called Good Morning, Good Night by Lily Brooks Dalton. And it was announced in June of 2019 that George Clooney would direct and star in the film, with Netflix distributing the film, and filming was going to begin in October of 2019. Felicity Jones was added to the cast in July of that year, and Jones became pregnant after having been cast, so Clooney rewrote her character as a pregnant character rather than using a body double. So a nice little addition there to sort of suit the needs of the cast. Filming did begin on October 21, 2019 in England and finished in Iceland in February of 2020. There's this big scene that takes place while there's a huge blizzard, and that was actually shot in 50 mile per hour or 80 kilometers an hour winds with temperatures at minus 40 degrees. Some shooting also took place at La Palma in the Canary Islands, and for his role, George Clooney lost 25 pounds or about 11 kilos. The scenes that were set on Earth and involved Clooney were actually shot before the end of 2019, while the scenes set in space were shot after Christmas. The film, this is an interesting side of things, the film was shot with the Arri Alexa 65 cameras, which are the digital equivalent of a 65mm film. And the intent was that they were going to release this in IMAX theaters, but as we've seen with a lot of films recently, because of the COVID pandemic, it didn't happen. Industrial Light and Magic, they provided the stagecraft virtual production technology that they used in that Disney Plus television show, The Mandalorian, with this wall using LED panels, allowing the backgrounds to be rendered using this Unreal Engine 4 with two LED walls built around the observatory deck. So very cool, very cool, those effects. At about the 39-minute mark in the film, there's this black and white film playing in the background. So for those that are film buffs would know that film is On the Beach from 1959, which is a film about the end of the world. And I'm pretty sure that was actually filmed in Melbourne in Australia as well. But that stars Ava Gardner and Gregory Peck. And Gregory Peck, most of us would know him from To Kill a Mockingbird. But his real-life grandson, Ethan Peck, he's actually in this film. He plays Augustine's younger self, or George Clooney's character. So a nice little connection there. Obviously, I said before, this is based on a novel, and there are some differences. I think the biggest difference I could see between the novel and the film is that the ending, as Augustine, and sorry, I did say spoilers. This is going to be hard to talk about without spoilers, but the ending of the film, Augustine and Iris, they realize that, that father and daughter, whereas in the novel, they never actually realize this. So leaves a little bit more ambiguity in the novel, I guess. When it was released on Netflix, it was the most watched film on Netflix over its first 5 days. The film did remain in the top 10 for the first 12 days of release, and Netflix did reveal that the film was seen by 72 million households during its first week. Some crazy numbers there, some pretty big numbers. We go to March of 2021, where Variety reported that the film was the most watched among Netflix Oscar-nominated titles and assigned it an audience appeal of 98 out of 100. So that's pretty high on the audience appeal scale for Variety, which I have no idea what it is. Translations around the world, what's the title? So obviously the English title, Midnight Sky, we see some moments that obviously relate to we're in space and those sorts of things. In French, it's called Midnight in the Universe, so a little different word there. In Chinese, I like this title, Drifting in the Eternal Night. That just sounds so poetic, doesn't it? And in Vietnamese, this one's a little bit more basic. It's called The Twinkling Night Sky. Sounds like a kid's nursery rhyme almost. This did have a working title of... it had a working title that they fake one under production, and they called it Aether, which is the title of the spacecraft in this film. But it did also work under the title of Good Morning, Good Night, which was the title of the novel mentioned before. The tagline, there are two taglines. The first tagline is, there's a universe between all of us. Makes sense if you're looking at this film from the perspective of a father and daughter sort of relationship. And the other one was And Hope Finds a Way. And I guess that hope for humanity is what this film does leave on. What are the critics... Oh, before we get to the critics and audiences, I did mention before that this hit... it did have a small theatrical release from the 11th of December 2020. It hit Netflix on the 23rd of December 2020, so that tells me we are right on the back end of the 2020 Netflix catalogue. We're almost going to hit 2021. This cost about $100 million to make. I think it took about $3 million in theatres during that minimal or small theatrical run. It was nominated for an Oscar. It was nominated for the Best Visual Effects at the Academy Awards. Had a further 45 nominations and 5 wins across that award season too. So now we can talk about what the critics and audiences are saying about this film. On Rotten Tomatoes, sits at 49%. That is on 252 reviews. That's a lot of critics and that is a lot of negativity. So that is rotten. The audience has it at 26%. That's even lower. That's on more than 2,500 ratings. That's a lot of ratings on Rotten Tomatoes. So very, very on the rotten side. IMDb, a little bit higher, 5.7 out of 10. That's on 90,000 ratings, so a fair few ratings there. Letterboxd sits in that middle range at 2.5 out of 5 on nearly 68,000 ratings. It's been logged by 89,000 people. And Metacritic, our last one, the traffic light system of green, yellow, and red, it sits in that yellow range across the board. So the critics have it 58 out of 100 on 42 reviews, and the audience are 4.6 out of 10 on 150 reviews. So both in that yellow system. What are my early thoughts on this film? It's watchable. George Clooney, I think he's pretty good. The visual effects are really good too, but it does drag at times, which sort of makes you wonder how almost a much tighter and direct film probably could have landed a little bit better. Excuse the term landed in relation to this film. It's time to talk about some of the characters. So the characters in this film. Augustine, George Clooney's character, he's this scientist who stays behind on this dying planet that's being evacuated because he's terminally ill and he's got little to live for. And he's heavily depressed, he drinks, he pops pills, he's lonely, he contemplates his own decisions in life, and as I've said, spoilers, he's sort of accompanied throughout this film by a girl called Iris, who, through the reveal later on, is a figment of his imagination, of the daughter that he found out he had that he never spent any time with. So that's where he's at. We have that sort of story running parallel to Augustine's story on the planet up in space. We've got Sully, who's she's pregnant. She's in charge of this shuttle that's exploring, and the shuttle, it's ready to return to Earth, but they have no understanding that the world that they left no longer exists. It's not what it used to be, and I guess that's the troubles or the character development we would have liked to have seen through the team on the spaceship, because that's probably the big emotional pull you can get is the reveal that what they thought they were going home to is no longer there. But it all sort of happens in the last little couple of moments. Aid is the commander of the ship. He's the father of Sully's soon-to-be child, so we sort of see him too. He plays a good role throughout. Maya is this young adventurer. She's sort of like the easy kill in the film. She does die and pass, when they go out onto the ship to fix it. Sanchez, he's I don't know. It's tough. He really enjoyed spending time with Maya because she reminded him of his own daughter who had passed away and would have been the same age as Maya. So that's where his emotional connection is. And Mitchell, the last sort of guy on the ship, he just wants to go home and see his family. So that's why he's grumpy the whole film pretty much. And then the other character is Iris, who is this young girl who's accidentally left behind at the station with Augustine. She's a mute, she barely communicates, she likes to touch stuff, and Augustine likes to tell her off all the time. But she does give Augustine this reason to continue on, even if she's also his biggest regret, because as revealed, Iris is Sully, same person, figment of his imagination. Alright, the director, George Clooney, we all know his work for acting, everyone knows films he's been in. He has directed a fair chunk of films as well though, like Good Night, Good Luck, Leatherheads, The Ides of March, The Monuments Men, that was a big film when it came out, Suburbicon, and I think his most recent one was called Boys in the Boat. So George Clooney, maybe gonna, as he gets a bit older, head towards the more directing path, but who knows? All right, let's talk about some scenes in this film. What are some scenes that stood out, and what are some scenes that I didn't necessarily like? I think there's this little pea fight, like the peas, between Augustine and Iris to create some bonding between the two characters. I thought that was cute. I thought that was good. There's a scene where Augustine and Iris, they've left the station because they've got to try and get to another satellite at another station. They're going through this snowstorm, and he loses her for a bit in this big blizzard. The camera work, the isolation of him by himself, completely freaking out that he's lost her, super tense. I thought that was really well done. And then the final shot over the credits too of Sully sitting at the deck, that was really impressive, just as the credits rolled, just focusing on her and what's to come for them. So I thought that was nice too. Things that didn't necessarily work, that whole Aether ship that they're on, like, yes, the graphics are great, it's designed beautifully, but there were so many times that there were these extended long shots of the exterior, just not needed. We didn't need it. Cut your budget back a bit, make it about the storytelling. That's what they could have done. Augustine and Iris, there's a scene, like I mentioned before, they're trekking across the snow, and in one of the moments, they find this abandoned container, like this ship container sort of thing. And, Augustine's walking around with this gun protecting them. And, he opens the door to this crater, and he's got the gun in his hand, and instead of, like, going in to check with the gun, he just, like, pushes Iris straight through. I was like, what on earth are you doing? You're putting the poor kid in front of you. I thought that was, a weird moment, especially if you want the audience to continue to believe that Iris is really there with him. There's a scene, like the whole team, they're out when they're up in the ship at the Ether, and they're out repairing. Half of them are inside directing, half of them are outside on the ship. And meteors hit, and it just goes on and on. And like, yeah, I know it looks good, but like, especially the Sweet Caroline song, like, why was that needed? Just, man, I don't know. That really frustrated me, that moment too. All right, themes, ideas. What's this film trying to say? So obviously, like, the big thing I think about this film is the idea of climate change and, Earth, and looking after our resources, and how much longer can Earth stay functional if we keep abusing it the way it is, and what are we left with afterwards? Obviously, human connection is a big thing in this too. That idea of love and loss and hope and regrets and sometimes being denied a farewell to a family. How does that impact people too? There's that idea of guilt, that focus on work rather than life. Choosing a career over spending time with a child or being a dad, that's there as well. Redemption, I mean, it's not a huge redemption arc, but that idea of saving people and using stars as a way to find your way if you're lost too. And this is like flowers throughout this film. Obviously, we've got characters called Iris. There's mention of calling a kid Hyacinth. Like, obviously, flowers are a symbol of life and the importance of life too. And I'd say there's a Netflix original film that came out this year in 2024 called Atlas with Jennifer Lopez. And if you want a more explicit version of this theme of flowers and life, go watch that film or listen to our bonus podcast episode too. What did I take away from this film? I think, like, the younger version of Clooney's character through these flashbacks that we see, like the first one, I was like, surely they have done some de-aging digital effect on him. I was very glad to see that they hadn't. Like, that was nice to see. Like, Gregory Peck's grandson looks like George Clooney, but the reason I think why you believe it's some sort of de-aging is because they did record George Clooney's voice, and they dubbed it in, and they used some digital alterations to make it a little bit higher pitched. So that's probably where it looks a little bit confusing. All right, some questions, some pondering, some ideas about this film. Like, I guess that idea with the opening, I guess, like, they use lots of these little shots of showing the isolation that Augustine is under, whether it's making coffee, eating food by himself, doing his blood transfusions. We see him set the kitchen on fire, and then he just puts it out. Why did we have that? It didn't add any tension. It just happened. It was just like put in there. Like, I thought that was a waste of space. And I know this is from the book, so obviously you have a child in the film, but casting kids in films obviously a really hard thing because at times they struggle with heavy dialogue. But I really appreciated this film, and I know, like I said, it's from the book, but Iris didn't speak as a child, and that made the character so much more believable. So I thought that was really good too. The score at times in this film, that was way too much. Like, space films, they're often effective with silence, the dead silence of space, rather than these huge scores that we see in this film, like these dramatic scores that in this film, they are trying to tell the audience how they should be feeling at certain times. And that, for me, was a little bit frustrating too. And I think the whole backwards and forwards dialogue between everyone on the spaceship about what Sully would call her kid or a child, that just felt a little bit forced. So anyway, that's it. I still like this. I didn't hate this film. This film was still enjoyable, and I'm going to wrap it up now. We give the films a rating out of 5 on this show. Like, the flashbacks, they didn't add much to that idea, I guess, of regret that they wanted you to feel for Augustine. But they probably only work for that late twist reveal that sort of lands, but probably only just. It's nice to see an original sci-fi movie, but it could have been more, and I think that's probably where I'm frustrated, because this could have been more. But I'm still giving it a 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 for me. The visuals sort of hold up really well. So we're on socials. We have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have X, formerly known as Twitter. On there, we'd love you to answer our question of the week. And the question or the thought about the film this week, it's the child version of Iris. Like, why did she appear to Augustine? Like, what tempted him or made his subconscious create this illusion of this child that he'd never met to follow him around and keep him company? Was that just that idea of isolation and needing company? And that's why she was created. I don't know. If anyone's got any other ideas, please do let us know. We are back next week. This must be close to the last 2020 film on the Netflix catalogue. But next week we have the Indian Hindi language black comedy thriller from 2020 called AK vs. AK. It's directed by Vikramaditya Motwani and stars Anil Kapoor, Anurag Kashyap, Hardvash Khan Kapoor, and Yogita Bihani. Okay, I'm interested. No idea what it's about, but as always with the international films, we get on board, give them a crack. So that's what we got next week. As always, thanks for hanging out for this episode, and I will see you next week.